Here we go again.
Hey guys, Jim here. Welcome in once again. I want to take a look at a couple of different Kansept knives that just arrived to me and discuss what this company is doing to offer some really interesting designs, some of their own design, some that are designed by other knife makers that they have contracted with, and done so with some really cool materials, really striking looks, and incredibly affordable prices. So we're going to take a look at these two today, and that is the Baku and the Tuckamore. We'll start with the Baku. I assume I'm pronouncing that correctly. Now, I've already taken these out and taken a look at them, but the packaging is always exceptional from Kansept. I think they have some of the most unique packaging I've ever seen. Inside of here is going to be all your knife information, warranty, all that kind of good stuff, and a microfiber cleaning cloth. And of course, their super cool two-piece box and the pouch inside. Let's go ahead and get this bad boy open. Now, one of the things I've seen customers commenting on online is the fact that this knife is quite a bit smaller than they were expecting. Now, while it's easy to say, well, dude, just look at the specs on the website, man. It says a 3.2-inch blade, duh. Sometimes it just doesn't register. And for some reason, you end up expecting something different than what actually arrives when you're ordering stuff online. And that really is one of the biggest benefits to watching videos and reviews about knives online, is the fact that you get somewhat of a physical representation of what that knife can be expected to be when it arrives to you. Now, what we're looking at here is a design by Sparrow Knife Company. Zoom in on the logo there. And for those that don't know Greg Schaub, he is a 20-year Coast Guard veteran who is now a full-time knife maker. And really his most widely known model is the Strix, which, by the way, kind of took the entire community by storm last year. Everybody reviewed one. I did not. I do not have a personal relationship with Greg or Sparrow Knife Company, but everybody was just extolling the virtues of this really cool design. I think it's gorgeous as well. And at some point, I will do my best to get my hands on one and do a full review for you guys, because I think it's one that that certainly is going to be a lot of fun, and it's a really, really good looking design, and what seems to be a very practical EDC design as well. But back to the knife at hand, the Baku. The origins of the name is it is named after a mythological Japanese spirit that devours nightmares. And that description is right off of Kansept's website. I'm not entirely certain how accurate that description is. Very, very cool looking knife. I will say this, for the size, it fits pretty good in the hand. I think this knife would have been better without a flipper tab, which for me is sacrilege to say because I am a flipper kind of guy. But when the knife is open, the flipper tab forms a finger guard, as it typically does, and it forces you to stop moving your hand up. So you tend to hold it here, and you're barely getting 4 fingers on this. Now, you can choke up into the forward finger choil, but it's kind of a sharp-edged finger choil, and there's no room between your flesh and the heel of the edge, unfortunately. So it would be fairly easy, especially if you have fat fingers, to squeeze into this and cut a notch into your finger because of the edge. But you do have a couple different deployment methods. I haven't tried reverse flicking it. Yeah, that works too. So you can reverse flick it, you can thumb flick it, you can use the flipper tab, and you can slow roll it as well. Although the detent, being as crisp as it is better set for flicking or flipping than it is for the slow roll, because you could kind of pop this up and the blade will go out a little bit further than you expect it to, and that can sometimes end up cutting you as well as you're following through. With the basic idea out of the way, let's get into my typical format of the videos. We'll do the TLDW. We'll go over the pros and the cons as quickly as possible. Then we'll get into the specs and then into the actual review with my personal thoughts. So, TLDW, here we go, starting with the pros. First pro for me is I really like the overall design. It has a very slim, sleek look, and it's kind of a marriage between a Persian and an Americanized tanto. Actually, not even Americanized, because Americanized would be a much more truncated tip and usually angling much further upwards. So it's definitely got that Persian look to it, although a typical Persian, the tip will end up coming up higher than the pivot, and in a lot of cases higher than the spine of the handle as well. But it certainly has a Persian type look. Then it's got that tanto tip toward the front there. So it is unique in the design regard. I do personally wish it was a little bit larger, so we'll put that in the con section. So I like the design. Another pro is going to be the action. It's got a really snappy detent without being overly hard, so it's not going to be abusive on your finger if you're constantly flipping your knife over and over and over throughout the day. Another pro is going to be the multiple methods of deployment by adding the thumb studs on there. I think that's usually a really good idea, as long as it doesn't take away from the overall design of the knife, which I feel this one does not. And another pro is going to be the finishing. So you've got this, I'm going to zoom in so you can actually see it. You've got this blacked out PVD finish with stone washing. So you got a black wash finish. And then the inlay here is in, and you can't see it from the back. The inlay here is black and white carbon fiber. The carbon fiber may well be camo carbon, but they don't list it as such, but camo carbon does make a similar motif. Really like the extra grinds and bevels that are put into the frame there as well. It looks really good and feels really good as well. And another pro for me is going to be the design of the hidden screw pocket clip. Blind screwed pocket clips, I think, are the most attractive way to do it because it's less distracting, not a bunch of hardware sticking out, even though you have hardware here for the back spacer and to assemble the knife. But it's wonderfully machined. It looks good. It's also something we don't see very often, a convex contoured design, so it's more comfortable in the hand. Fewer hot spots dealing with that when it's in your hand. And it flows well with the overall design. I am big on a pocket clip being designed into the knife and not just being an afterthought. Okay, we've designed the whole knife, now we've got to make a pocket clip to make it functional, and then they just kind of throw whatever design haphazardly onto the knife, and it usually looks like crap, and this one looks really, really good. So now we get to the cons. As I was alluding to earlier, I wish the knife was just a little bit bigger. If we had another 1/4 inch on the blade, adding about a 1/2 inch overall to the knife, I think would be perfect for somebody with my size hands. I wear a large to extra large riding glove. So having it a little bit larger, I think, would be more beneficial to more people. But for those that live in blade size restrictive areas, this might be a better way for you to go. keeping you under 3.5 inches is really, it's actually a good EDC size. But I think for somebody that's going to maybe hard use the knife or just use it in general, they may want just a little bit more, especially given the fact that you've got a finger choil cut into the blade, so you're losing about 1/4 inch or so off of the cutting edge. Another con for me is going to be the shape of the flipper tab. Now they've got some pretty good jimping here, so your finger doesn't really slide off, but you're not really going down in here because the frame gets in your way. So you're really going to be up here on the flipper tab, and that means this corner, even though it's radiused, this corner is going to dig into your finger just a little bit. And the last con for me is going to be the fact I wish the blade stock was a little bit thicker, just because I feel that this could be a really useful blade shape, blade profile, overall design. I think it'd be pretty useful for EDC. However, the really thin blade stock keeps the knife feeling a little more lightweight than I think I'd want it to be. Even though some people may complain and say this is hefty, it's really not. It's a pretty lightweight knife. You're looking at 3.35 ounces, so it's not really heavy at all. But the ergonomics of the knife give you the confidence that you feel like you could do a lot of different cutting tasks with it. And I think the smaller size may be a little bit limiting for some people. But if you like a smaller knife and you're in the market for something that's going to be wildly different, I think this is going to be a really, really great choice. And there are a lot of different finishes and inlay options available on Kansept's website, and whatever dealers they happen to be partnering up with. I will try to remember in the edit to pop up various pictures of the different options that are available, so you can maybe see if there's one that attracts you more than the black wash with black and white carbon fiber. I liked this. I chose this one because I kind of like that black and white look. It's pretty neutral, and it's not overly pimpy. I think there was one that had carbon fiber in, Timascus inlays, and it was either that or the Tuckamore that I saw that had the Timascus inlays, and I went, you know what, it's cool, and it's pretty. But there are just days I want to reach for a handsome knife that's not particularly crazy or over the top, and this is certainly going to fit that bill. Now, breaking off into the specs, let's take a quick look and see what we're dealing with. Overall length is 7.27 inches, blade length of 3.2 inches at 120 thou thick, so not very thick. I mean, it's not crazy thin, but I just wish it was beefed up. Maybe 140, 145 thou would be really, really nice. S35 VN steel. And while this is actually a trailing point design, it is a marriage between a Persian and a Tanto. So you could look at it either way that you want to, but it truly is a trailing point design with a little bit more of a flat surface there on the front edge. The black wash looks great. Handle length of 4 inches, all titanium, and a weight of 3.35 ounces. Now, in the vein of the standard format, talking about my personal thoughts, that's pretty well covered in the TLDW, but I do like the fact that they decided to do a liner lock on this instead of a frame lock, because you already have such a skinny, narrow frame that it would be very difficult for you to hold the knife and flip it without applying additional pressure on a lock bar, making it more difficult to open. So the liner lock was the best way to go in this particular design. I like the unique shape of the inlay. It's not distracting from the overall design of the knife. It flows pretty well with it, and it doesn't look out of place. And it also is not the focal point. The focal point really is the overall design, and if I really had to pick out one area, it's going to be the blade. The blade is definitely the focal point of this knife, but the inlay is done very, very well, and it's nearly seamless, by the way. The only way that you can close your eyes and swipe your thumb across it and tell that there's an inlay is the fact that the carbon fiber has a different feel to it than the smooth titanium does. But that's it. I mean, it's almost perfectly seamless. We can get some close-up views here, if I can get it to focus. And you'll see that it's almost seamless. They did a really, really nice job for a budgetary price. And if I haven't discussed the price already, they're about $175. So not very expensive at all for titanium S35VN steel. There's a lot going on here to love. And I think overall, it's a good choice for the money that you're spending. And continuing on with the 2-for-1 in this video, let's get our butts into the Tuckamore. Break that open. I really like the size of this. This feels very, very good in the hand. Nice big blade window so that you can open it however you want to. Really good for reverse flicking. Fantastic action. And in order to reduce the overall length of this video, let's go ahead and drop directly into the TLDW. Now, you've already heard me raving about a couple of things so far, so it's going to be pretty easy. First pro for me will be the ergonomics and size. Where they've placed this choil, the way they've angled the rear of the frame, the thumb depression leading directly into the jimping on the spine of the blade. It feels like no matter how you put this knife in your hand, it's just going to move into position and lock perfectly in your grip. I like that feeling a lot. I do wish it was a little bit thicker though, because it's got such a good feel to it in the overall shape of it. I just wish it swelled a bit more and filled my hand just a little bit more. But if you've got normal size or small hands, this is probably going to be just perfect for you as it is. Another pro for me is going to be the copper-infused carbon fiber that's being used on this inlay. I think it's very, very handsome. Now, it's a luck of the draw as to how much copper you're getting in the carbon fiber. I have reviewed quite a few knives with this material, and I've manufactured a couple of knives with this material, and sometimes you get very large bands of copper, and sometimes they're very thin. This almost has a raindrop Damascus feel to it. But it's definitely more carbon fiber than copper. But it's a really, really cool look. I like how they did that. Another pro for me is going to be the large blade size and the shape of the blade. It's kind of a modified sheep's foot, if you will. You could really get up on this and use a pinch grip and do some precise slicing and dicing and cutting. Nicely done there. And the final pro for me is going to be the snappy action and smooth action. They did a fantastic job making a knife that feels, I don't want to say feels pleasurable because that sounds weird and twisted, but it feels really good to deploy. It's got a really, really nice action to it no matter how you choose to open it. Now for the cons. I feel that the overall design is somewhat basic. And what's funny is a lot of times we will critique a knife for being form over function, right? You see some wild, crazy designs and go, man, that looks really cool, but it just doesn't seem practical to use or comfortable in it, and various types of grips to actually be used. Here's a knife that looks to my eye as if it was based around function and then they kind of designed around it. So it doesn't make for the most aesthetically pleasing overall design, but it feels really good in the hand. It's got a good balance to it. It's got a great blade shape that's very, very useful. So I think this is definitely more for somebody that's looking for an actual cutter, a knife that will actually be used instead of something that will be displayed or photographed on a hank for Instagram, that sort of thing. And then they've taken steps to kind of beautify the design with the materials that are being used and the finishing being used. So you've got the matte finish of the bead blasted titanium. Then you have the inlays with the copper infused carbon fiber, and the copper will tend to pop in the light. It's not polished. I really, really wish it were. Instead, they left it almost a matte finish. This is probably somewhere around a 600 grit finish on the carbon fiber. You can actually feel the copper a little bit as you run your fingers over it. Had these been fully polished, where there was a shine and sheen to it, I think it would have given you a much nicer two-tone finish. I do not like the gold anodized titanium pivot collars. They're very, very out of place, to the point of being distracting. Oh my goodness. It doesn't match anything on the knife at all. And it would have been fine to do black, like a black PVD, or you can anodize heading over toward a color that would be more complementary to the copper. But yeah, that gold just does not work for me. Really love the pocket clip. Again, they're doing a great job by convexing the large surfaces of the clip, making it contoured and comfortable in the hand, just like the rest of the frame. See how nicely contoured that is. Overall, I think if I had to choose between these two knives, this would be the one I would reach for the most often because of the practicality of the design, the feel in the hand. But I like more of the overall choices made in the Sparrow design. Everybody's going to feel a little bit differently. But honestly, once you put this one in your hand, you're thinking to yourself, why didn't they put just a little tiny bit more effort into the overall shape and the overall design of this knife? Because it's so well made. The action is so fantastic. The lock bar tension is just perfect. Everything that was done on the knife was executed very, very well. It just needed a little bit more refinement in the design and possibly in the finishing, although I do like the finishing except for the pivot collars. Let's go ahead and get into the specs on this knife so you understand what it is that you're buying. With the Tuckamore, you're getting an overall length of 8.12 inches, blade length of 3.54, so just a hair over 3.5 inches, making it a little bit more utilitarian friendly, maybe not as small as many EDC knives that you carry. Blade thickness at 118 thou, and the blade material is CPM 20 CV. A lot of people love 20 CV. They're calling it a Warncliffe. You know what? Yeah, I'm going to backtrack on my words where I was saying it was more of a modified sheep's foot. A sheep's foot would have some belly or some curvature to the edge, and it really doesn't. It's pretty straight, pretty flat. So I will concede to that easily. And the overall weight is 3.63 ounces. So not heavy, but it's not a super lightweight. It's kind of a good balance in between for somebody that likes to carry a medium to full-size knife. You'll find this to be lighter weight than most titanium frame locks. It really is satisfying to open and close. It feels really, really good. Anyway, that's my thoughts on both of these brand new Kansept models. And I think either way you go, for the money that you're spending, And I probably forgot to mention these are $189 for the Tuckamore. Whichever way you're going, staying well under $200, I think you've got some great choices there. This one being a little bit more practical for cutting purposes and daily carry because of the larger size. And this one being good for a lighter weight, smaller, less obtrusive EDC in the pocket. And as often as I say, I don't ever put anything in the same pocket as my knife, I keep seeing more people online. Just saw one in a Facebook group yesterday talking about how they just got a brand new knife and they just destroyed the finish because they throw their car keys in the same pocket, which I find ridiculous. Why would you put car and house keys or anything at all up against your knife? They're meant to be used and show wear and everything else over time, but why prematurely wear it for no good reason? This doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, so this would take up a lot less room in your pocket if you're the kind that does carry stuff in that pocket, or you stand around with your hands in your pockets all the time. This is going to be less obtrusive in that manner as well. Anyway, there's my thoughts on those two. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time.